Hello, this is Daniel Mart, and today I'm going to be doing another review. This time around, I'm going to be doing a review for Ant-Man, which stars Paul Rudd, Michael Douglas, Evangeline Lilly, Corey Stowe, Bobby Cannavale, Anthony Mackie in a cameo role, Judy Greer, T.I., Michael Pena, and I hope I'm going to try to pronounce his last name correctly, hopefully, David Dastmalchian, and Haley Atwell as in a small role again, and John Slattery, and again in a small role. So yeah, fresh off Avengers: Age of Ultron, now we have Ant-Man, the smallest superhero possible, getting one of the biggest movie treatments in history. Seriously, I went to this movie like half the movie theater or whatever, have the screenings or whatever for Ant-Man. Most of them sold out. So yeah, I mean, the movie theater I went to, they have like 20, I think like 21 or 22 rooms or whatever, 23 whatever screens or whatever. About 10 to 12 of them were for Ant-Man. Most of them were sold out, and it was about past a week after it came out. Okay, so that was pretty big. So yeah, before I begin though, 10-second spoiler warning as usual for those that have yet to actually watch the movie and haven't already. Stop the video, go check it out, and then come back and watch the rest of this review. 10-second spoiler warning as usual, starting now. Okay, so 10 seconds are up. So for those who have yet to actually watch the movie and haven't already, please don't comment down below or be messaging me that I never gave you a fair warning, because as usual I did. So as usual, quick synopsis, likes and dislikes, and then the rate. So yeah, this was one of my most anticipated movies of this year. I believe I put it within like the top, a lower half of the top 5 when I did my list for top 10 most anticipated movies of the year. I definitely put it in the top 10. I think it was like number 6 or 7 or something like that, or maybe 8. So yeah, I was really anticipating this movie. Now I didn't know what to expect. However, we did already know that Marvel could still take a lesser known property or group of characters and still turn them into something big, as we saw with Guardians of the Galaxy. Now Ant-Man is considerably more bigger than Guardians of the Galaxy, popularity wise. So yeah, I mean, because when you think about it, Guardians of the Galaxy, before the movie was announced or whatever, they were probably like D-list, maybe C-list characters at the most. Ant-Man, before this, he was a B-list character, A-list sometimes, but mostly a B-list character at the most, normally. Now, both of them, Guardians and Ant-Man, they've jumped up to A-list. And yeah, now, did this movie do justice to the character? Well, I mean, the synopsis, it's basically, you have Scott Lang, portrayed by Paul Rudd, and basically, he's this small-time robber. He did this giant, it wasn't exactly a bank heist, it was more like electronic bank heist, if that makes sense. He was in jail for about a year or two, or that came out wrong. He was in jail for about a year or two, and he gets out, and now he's trying to get back into the world, be a normal civilian. He's trying to see his daughter. He's trying to work at Baskin Robbins. They fire him after they figure out his criminal background. Baskin Robbins always finds out. That was a pretty funny line in the movie. So yeah, now, then he gets the Ant-Man suit. Michael Douglas is training him. He's there with Evangeline Lilly, which she was pretty good in the movie. And now he's trying to, well, Michael Douglas, he's trying to stop Corey Stowe's character, Yellow Jacket, basically, to not fall into the hands of Hydra to some extent. So yeah, overall, pretty good movie. Now, is it as good as Age of Ultron? Some people say yes, some people say no. Me, I wouldn't say it's as good as Age of Ultron. I think it is a little bit more entertaining than Age of Ultron. However, it's not as good as Age of Ultron, if you know what I mean. Now, entertaining doesn't exactly mean it's better than Age of Ultron. I do think that from an entertainment stance, it is a little bit more entertaining than Age of Ultron. However, I don't think it's as good as Age of Ultron. So, Yeah, I mean, I will say it's very funny and dramatic when it needs to be. It's funny when it needs to be. It's very dramatic when it needs to be. Michael Pena, T.I., and David Dachamaliakan, or whatever, however you pronounce his name, they were funny as hell throughout the whole movie. They were like the secondary characters, like the comedic relief, and that was pretty funny. Um, Especially Michael Pena and T.I. I mean, the David guy, he was like this Russian character too, but you kind of forgot. I'm gonna be honest, you kind of forgot about the Russian guy because Michael Pena and T.I. were always on top of their game, and the David guy, the Russian David guy, is I'm just gonna call him David. He had a few lines, and again, when he talked, he was pretty funny, and I think that's one of the best things about this movie. It's comedic. I mean, not only are the secondary characters comedic, everybody, Michael Douglas, he's actually pretty comedic. I've actually never let me rephrase that. I've actually haven't seen that much of Michael Douglas in movies. By again, he's considered one of the best actors, and I can see as to why and how he is considered one of the best actors out there because, oh my gosh, Michael Douglas, Paul Rudd may have been the main character, but Michael Douglas stole the show from the beginning when he was talking to Haley Atwell and Howard Stark, or the guy who portrays Howard Stark, John Slattery. From there on out, he was someone in a movie to watch out for. Like, oh, this guy's gonna be good. And what's funny is that Michael Pena, he's a scene stealer when he's trying to be comedic. Michael Douglas, he's a scene stealer when because he's the most dramatic character out there. And then you have Paul Rudd, who's a scene stealer because, well, he's the main character to begin with. So, and there's times where you have all three of them in one room or in a scene or whatever, and you have one scene stealer over another scene stealer over another scene stealer, and it's just pretty funny. And it is possible to have multiple scene stealers in a movie. Just watch, I don't know, Django Unchained, for example. It's like the Leonardo DiCaprio thing with Jamie Foxx, I believe, is who portrayed Django on that movie. So yeah, so that was pretty good. But overall, pretty good movie, pretty good action. Evangeline Lilly, I'm gonna say I thought her character was a little bit bland at the beginning. She was just kind of there. She was a daughter of of Michael Douglas. Like, she was just kind of pissed because she doesn't have, I forget why she's pissed. I'm gonna be honest. Like, her mom died and somehow that's Michael Douglas's fault. So she's kind of angry, and she was kind of bland in my opinion, kind of cookie cutter up until like towards the end where she actually got some kind of interesting. Corey Stoll, I thought he did a pretty good job. The only other thing I've seen him in was Nonstop, and he was pretty good in that movie. But again, his character a bit cookie cutter. He's like, oh, I'm a big businessman and I'll have to be evil and Hydra, hell yeah. So a little bit cookie cutter. I mean, his yellow jacket suit, that was pretty cool. So yeah, and I did like how they kind of explored some of the other stuff in Ant-Man lore, such as the microverse. That was pretty cool. They kind of explored Giant Man for a second towards the end of the movie. That was also pretty cool. So overall, it is a pretty good movie. I think Age of Ultron is a little bit better. However, I do think this one is a little bit more entertaining. And it is a smaller, more contained story when you compare it to some of the other Marvel movies from the Avengers, from the first Avengers movie and Age of Ultron, compared to like Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, the Hulk, or whatever, and Guardians of the Galaxy, Winter Soldier, or whatever, Dark World, Iron Man's 1, 2, and 3, again, Guardians or whatever, Incredible Hulk from back in 2008 or whatever. This is, I think, the most self-contained movie. It doesn't really reference that much of the other movies in the MCU. I mean, it does have references, obviously, because it needs to, from the MCU. Like, they mentioned the Avengers, and then you had this one really funny scene. It's like I believe it was Michael Douglas who just says, well, you can't have the Avengers drop in the city every time there's a problem. I thought that was pretty funny, especially with Age of Ultron. And then you had the one really funny scene with Anthony Mackie and Paul Rudd, which we kind of saw in the trailers at the beginning of it. I'm gonna say that was probably one of the best scenes in the movie. Overall, pretty good movie. Again, more entertaining than Age of Ultron. However, I still say Age of Ultron was a better movie in this case for this out of Marvel movies this year. Next year, that's going to be interesting. Yeah, next year, when you want to talk about best Marvel movies, that's going to get interesting because you have Civil War, Doctor Strange, X-Men Apocalypse, Deadpool, and Gambit. You have 5 Marvel movies. Talk about comic book movies, you throw in the Ninja Turtles because you kind of need to, Ninja Turtles 2. Then out of DC, you have Suicide Squad and Batman v Superman, you have 8. And who the hell knows what else is going to come out next year to begin with, either way. Yeah, TMNT, still comic book film. Even if it's Michael Bay, still a comic book film. Don't forget that. Overall, pretty good movie. Again, Age of Ultron, better in my opinion. Ant-Man, still pretty good. On a scale of 1 to 10, though, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best, and 6 being decent, I will give this an 8 out of 10. I mean, any complaints out of the movie, I do think it did have a few pacing issues for the first half hour of the movie or so. It was just kind of a lot of setup, and again, some of the characters are kind of cookie cutters. Evangeline Lilly's and Corey Stoll's predominantly. But overall, it's a pretty good movie. You know, really comedic, really dramatic, really action-packed, and overall, just a fun movie. In general, and they did, and the end credit scenes they're really funny. I texted one of my friends. He's like, "Yo, did you see the end credit scenes?" And he's like, "Yeah, I saw the one where Evangeline Lilly is getting the Wasp costume, I guess." And he's like, "Oh, that's dope." I'm like, "Oh, that's dope. Did you see the other one?" And he was like, "What other one?" Yeah, by the way, there's two end credit scenes. He got pissed. He's like, "Oh, great, I need to watch a movie again." I'm like, whatever, it's still a good movie. So he's like, "Yeah, it's still a good movie, whatever." But yeah, there's 2 end credit scenes. There's an end credit scene right at the very end of the movie, towards at the very end. Spoilers for those who haven't seen the end credit scene. Basically, in this one you have, and it sets up for Civil War. You have Anthony Mackie, you have Falcon and Captain America, and they managed to. I don't know if they found Winter Soldier, if they've or they've already had him for some time, and they're wondering what to do with him. Whatever. They have Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes right in front of them, and they're asking, what should we do? What should we do? He's like, "Oh, I don't know. Call Tony Stark." He's like, "No, we can't do that because obviously, Winter Soldier will happen in Captain America too." So they're like, "What should we do?" And Falcon's like, "I know a guy who can shrink," or something like that. That was pretty cool. And speaking of Easter eggs, I also had the Stan Lee cameo, awesome as usual. But they had this one pretty cool Easter egg towards Spider-Man, which I didn't expect. And it's like this girl says, "I know a guy who can shrink, a guy who can run fast," or something like. I don't think it was run fast. I forget what it was. It's like a guy who can shrink, a guy who can do something else, and a guy who can crawl up walls. And apparently that line was there before the whole Spider-Man negotiation thing, before Spider-Man came back to Marvel. But now that Spider-Man isn't Marvel, it takes a whole different meaning. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, and again, it's not the first time they've tried to incorporate Spider-Man into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Again, they tried to do the Oscorp Tower back in Avengers for the whole New York battle scene. I mean, they've tried to do Easter eggs for Spider-Man before, and Sony's allowed it, but now that they actually have Spider-Man, it's going to be more interesting. They have Tom Holland as the guy who portrays Spider-Man, and apparently, interestingly enough, Marissa Tomei as Aunt May. That I really want to see because she's like 50-something years old. Actually, I did a video on that. She's 50 years old, I think. And Aunt May is usually at least 70-something years old. I mean, I heard they're doing the Ultimate version, so I guess that makes sense, but still be interesting. Because I think the youngest we've ever seen Aunt May was during the Amazing Spider-Man, which was like in her mid-60s, I think. Yeah, because the one from the Raimi trilogy, she was way into her 70s, maybe early 80s. Then again, I suck at telling age, so yeah. Still a pretty good movie. Again, 8 out of 10 for Ant-Man. And yeah, that's basically it for this review. Like the video, share on Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, or whatever you guys prefer. And aside from that, that's basically it for now. This is Daniel Mart signing off.